When Assetto Corsa Competizione was announced to be coming to consoles, at first I was actually pretty excited. I was thinking, hey, this is a great title to kick off the next generation, have it launch on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. But then we got the word that it would be releasing onto the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And that really caused my expectations to be somewhat tapered. I was thinking it would be a tall feat to release ACC on what essentially equates to 7-plus-year-old computer hardware. But I gotta give them credit. They did a decent job trying to port ACC over to the console. It is a full-fledged release of ACC, minus a couple caveats, and because of that, I'm pretty impressed. But the thing is, I'm not impressed enough to really give it an active recommendation and say that ACC on the consoles is a solid buy. So I'm sort of wanting to go into my thoughts on why I feel like ACC for the consoles is not really your best option for the console racing experience. So without further ado, let's jump in after this quick word from a sponsor.
I'm done playing. Let's drive.
So the first thing I want to reinstate again is that this is Assetto Corsa Competizione on the console. This is a semi-successful port of a racing simulation title onto a console platform. But the thing is that everything on the surface is good, but there are some core elements to the simulation that really hold it back. And the first thing is the major gripe I have with ACC, and that is the frame rate and the frame time. So we always hear about the frame rate of a title. We always hear about 30, 60, 120, 144, 240, and so on. And we get the general idea that a higher frame rate is better. Generally, for racing simulation, I prefer to have a minimum frame rate of 60 frames per second while driving. And 60 frames per second is generally the most comfortable low frame rate that I like to drive with. The thing is, with Assetto Corsa Competizione on the consoles, you are locked to 30 frames per second. Now, for some games, that is all right. For the more cinematic style games, for the ones that don't require fast movements or twitchy inputs, 30 can be all right. But with a driving simulation, I tend to feel that 60 frames per second should be the minimum. And that is not the only area where ACC struggles as well. The other thing I tend to see ACC struggling with is maintaining consistent frame times. So frame time is not as commonly described in the world of tech specs and things like that, but the very simplified description is frame time is the amount of time that a single frame is shown on the screen. So in a normal second, we get 1,000 milliseconds. You divide that by the frame rate you are getting, and that is how you get your ideal frame time while gaming. So for a 60 frame per second gaming experience, you're going to have a frame time of 16.66 milliseconds. And then if you drop that frame rate down to 30, you're going to get a 33.33333 frame time. So that is your ideal frame time. That is the ideal length of time that one frame will be on the screen to maintain a smooth gaming experience. Now with Assetto Corsa Competizione, we are sort of seeing a failure to maintain that 33.333 frame time. And that causes a lot of trouble because the issue is when these frames are inconsistently paced, it creates that sort of stutter, that sort of judder that makes it uncomfortable to drive. So when I lock my computer on ACC down to 30 frames per second, I get that rock solid 33.33 millisecond frame time, which makes a fairly comfortable driving experience even though I'm at 30 frames per second. On the console side, the frame time is all over the place in my opinion and it creates this very uncomfortable, unsmooth driving experience, which I personally can hardly tolerate. And that's only considering when you're driving one car on an empty track. Add in multiple cars, add in weather, add in time of day simulation, it actually drops the frame rate and you end up getting below 30 frames per second for a racing title. That is simply unacceptable for a racing sim in 2020, and it really detracts from the overall experience. And that is really disappointing. Because even when you drive with a wheel, it's okay. The force feedback is a little light for my liking, but it's still tolerable force feedback. It's what I've grown to sort of live with on the PC version, but transferred to consoles. But driving with a wheel, with that inconsistent frame time, with those frame rate drops, that's a big issue. And that is something that really frustrates me. So the other side of the element that I don't like with Assetto Corsa Competizione is it has simply one of the worst controller driving experiences that I have felt. And the thing is, I know this is a racing simulation. I know this is best intended to be used with a wheel. But the thing is, Assetto Corsa Competizione is now on the consoles. They're trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator. They want to appeal to the gamepad drivers and get them at least enticed by the title in order to motivate them to maybe get a wheel and jump into sim racing. And think about Gran Turismo. Think about if Gran Turismo was absolutely horrible with a controller. No one would drive it. They wouldn't get motivated to get a wheel and jump knee deep into the hobby. That is sort of what you're looking for. You're looking for a good racing title to draw people in and get them hooked. And if you drive Assetto Corsa Competizione with a controller, you're not going to get that enticing driving feel. And I know that Kunos Simulazioni is capable of using good gamepad controls. Assetto Corsa on the console, the previous title, had decent gamepad controls. You need to tune it a little bit, but it worked. This is just a total mess, in my opinion, and it really detracts from the driving experience. So the thing is that with Assetto Corsa Competizione on the consoles, it is ACC on the consoles. I will give it that. They got a high-grade racing simulation title, and they released it for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. But the thing is, I think it should have been postponed and made into a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X launch title. That would have likely taken full advantage of the hardware they have available. That would have been able to get a rock-solid 60 frames per second driving experience. They would have had more time to refine the controller experience. They would have had more time to refine the wheel experience. They would have been able to make a truly great title instead of pushing a semi-mediocre racing game out for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And that's sort of the weird category I find myself in. With Assetto Corsa Competizione on this generation of consoles, it's just not a great racing experience. It's mediocre. And I know that Kunos is much better at putting out great racing titles than this implies. And it's disappointing. I would have loved to see a rock-solid 60 frames per second in ACC. I would have loved to see a higher car count. I would have loved to see more features, more functionality, and just a better console racing experience. But ultimately, I'd say if someone is looking to get ACC, look into investing a little more and getting the PC version. The console versions just are not representative of the true quality of ACC. If you have a half-decent gaming PC, you can get a far better experience driving ACC than you would ever get on any of the PlayStation or Xbox current generation consoles. With the Pro consoles not even being able to go above 30 frames per second, that is just disappointing. If you're looking to get Assetto Corsa Competizione, get the PC version. Do yourself a favor. while I am disappointed about ACC on the PS4 and Xbox One, I'm still not giving up hope. I still think that there is a chance that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X could get a port of this game, and it could fix a lot of these problems I currently have. Time will tell, but for this current generation, I hate to say it, but I would personally give ACC on this generation of consoles a miss. So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on Assetto Corsa Competizione on the consoles. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments. Also, if you like this video, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing so you can help keep us on track. For the Sim Racing Paddock, I'm William Marsh, and thanks for watching.